Hello, good evening. Suffolk Police said tonight they were taking no action against a campaigner who has opened a cannabis cafe in Ipswich. Daryl Noe opened the doors to the Ipswich Cannabis Lounge today.
It offers club members an opportunity to meet and select cannabis-based products. Some told Look East they used it for medicinal reasons. The police said they'd spoken to Mr Noe and would continue to monitor the situation.
It's the first day the Cannabis Lounge has opened and already they've had a steady stream of customers. It's for members only, the idea to allow people to discuss their needs for cannabis use in a safe environment.
Yeah, we don't have any THCA available at the moment. We're waiting for the Home Office to get back to us in regards to its legality.
The lounge provides different cannabis-based products which can be used medicinally.
We worry about the legal side of it all the time. Anybody who uses cannabis has to worry about people coming in their door, raiding their house, taking everything they have. So yeah, it's always a worry. We hope that people can understand what we're doing, and we're trying to help people who use cannabis as a medicine. And at the moment, there's no other help out there for them.
Daryl even grows the plants himself. He provides them for customers like Claire, who says it's vastly improved her quality of life.
Which I use under my tongue 4 times a day to treat my Crohn's disease. It's an anti-inflammatory. It does worry me. It seems ridiculously unfair. I'm not causing any harm to anybody. I'm saving the NHS a fortune. Just one of my injections was £20,000 a year. I've used any illegal substance before, and here I am just taking one plant and I've replaced about 20 different drugs.
But medical professionals say there's no hard evidence that cannabis has medicinal benefits, as there have been no clinical trials.
The problem with cannabis is if you've got a part of it which makes you feel good psychologically, it's very difficult to then decide whether the part of it is doing a physical job as well. And so that's why cannabis does have an increasingly powerful reputation as being good for things that make you feel bad. But we have to separate the psychoactive part from the anti-inflammatory part, and that's quite important that we should do that.
Daryl grows cannabis for his own use. He opened the lounge after a growing number of people contacted him, mainly, he says, for medicinal purposes. But what he's doing seems to be pushing the legal boundaries.
If the products that are being advertised for sale are cannabis or cannabis-derived substances, then it would be illegal to offer those for sale because you're possessing with intent to supply a Class B drug. As far as giving advice is concerned, there's no restriction on that. But if the intention, or even part of the intention, is to supply, whether for money or otherwise, then an offence is committed.
According to the NHS, 10% of regular cannabis users become dependent on it, but those here who swear by its medicinal purposes seem to think it's worth the risk. Felicity Simper, BBC Look East, Ipswich.
Well, let's get some views on this. Tim Passmore is the Police and Crime Commissioner for Suffolk, and here in the studio is Derek Williams, a member of Cannabis Law Reform, which is campaigning to end the prohibition of cannabis. Mr Passmore, first of all, we heard from the solicitor there that intent to supply is illegal. Why aren't the police taking action?
Well, the police are keeping this particular facility under review. They have been round there today, and they will continue to monitor what's going on there. But I do want to make it perfectly clear, from a personal point of view, I'm against the general legalisation of cannabis. That is against the law. The only exception I would support for that is if it's under proper medical supervision for conditions under the prescription of a doctor.
Well, you've heard what this man is doing. Do you think that's against the law?
Well, giving advice in itself is not against the law, but if he were to supply cannabis, then that would be illegal, and I would expect the Chief Constable and the police to take appropriate action, certainly.
And he's growing it as well, as well as selling products or producing products from it.
Yes, well, the provision or selling of products is illegal, so that would need to be enforced. But I would also like to point out that, with all the difficulties you've got with drugs and gangs and youth violence, I think this is the wrong thing to be doing at the wrong time. It will not send out the right message to would-be dealers and other users that this is the right way to proceed. So I maintain my view. Personally, I am against legalisation of cannabis.
Well, Derek Williams, let me bring you in there. The wrong thing to be doing at the wrong time. You think maybe that this is the right thing to be doing at the right time?
It's absolutely the right time,
Do you feel the mood is changing?
It is absolutely changing, yes. And there are probably 1 million medical users around the country at the moment who can't get their medicine, who have to buy it off the street, off the criminal market.
But there isn't absolute proof that it works as a medicine yet, is there?
Does any medicine work as absolute proof? There's a mountain of evidence that cannabis is an effective medicine. We've had, thousands of years' experience of using it as a medicine. It's not a new thing.
But can you see what Mr. Passmore is saying, that this is the thin end of the wedge if you start supplying it like this?
Change is coming, absolutely.
Don't you have to wait for change to come before you set up this kind of operation?
The issue of legalising cannabis has been a major topic now for 30, 40 years. How long do you have to wait? Yeah.
Mr. Passmore, it has been a grey area for some time, hasn't it?
Yes, I accept there's been a raging public debate for some time. But one of the other things that concerns me, and I'm not an expert on this, but there are practitioners who seriously question the damage done, the psychotic effects, particularly to teenage brain development. Is this really worth the risk? Then there's another point of view from a policing perspective about enforcement. We have enough difficulty with drug driving, and particularly those on prescription drugs. The police have got a lot to do anyway at the moment. I'm concerned about road safety, and as I said earlier, the gangs and youth violence that we've got in Suffolk and elsewhere in the country, I think this would be completely the wrong step, and it just shouldn't be done.
Mr. Williams, isn't there a problem that people who are taking these, even if they think they're taking it for medicinal reasons, don't necessarily know what levels are safe or appropriate for them?
Well, this is why it should, for medicinal use, should be under the direction of a doctor. I agree with the gentleman there. But what I would say is cannabis is here already. It's a multi-billion-pound industry which touches every city, town and village in the land. And the problem with the current law, it calls itself drug control. It is no such thing. Cannabis is not a controlled drug. Now, all the dangers we've just heard there about high potency, high THC cannabis, which may or may not be true, I don't know. These are a product of prohibition. We have no control over the cannabis market at the moment, and controlling the market is the only way to control drugs.
So I think this is a debate that is going to carry on,
yes.
Can imagine. Thank you both very much for your time this evening. And what do you think? Do you agree that it's time the UK decriminalised cannabis, or do you see it as a risk? Get in touch now and we will do our best to mention your views later in the programme. And thank you to everyone who's commented on our cannabis story. Rob has emailed us to say he thinks it should not be legalised. He has a next-door neighbour that smokes it and drives every day, he says. He says the police don't care.
John from Haverhill phoned to say he uses cannabis for a lung problem. He's allergic to painkillers and he says it does work for him.
Catherine in Brandon also phoned to say, I think cannabis should be legalised. I used to work with a lady who has MS and banning it made her life more difficult.
And a tweet from Stefan Peck 78 says other shops sell 5% CBD cannabis. So why do you pick on a small business in Ipswich?
A tweet from John Meikle, I cannot support the legalisation of cannabis. The 18 to 24 age group I deal with already have their brains mashed with it. And then they look to try cocaine or the next level of drugs. He says it's a zombie nation in the making. Thank you.
Yeah.